evening. The region's flooding misery continues for many tonight, with heavy rain and high tides continuing to cause problems. The Somerset levels remain one of the worst affected areas, with yet more homes and businesses flooded overnight.
Somerset County Council has pledged £250,000 to help people, but with more rain forecast, many are worried about water levels rising even further. John Beaver reports.
It's a sight that's become all too familiar. Another home ruined, the water ankle deep. For the Curtis family from Thorney on the Somerset levels, it's the second flood in as many years. But the clean-up can't begin until the water subsides, and the flood warnings remain in place.
According to the Environment Agency, this shouldn't happen any more than once in 100 years, and that's twice in 2 years. What do we do with our property? What do we do with insurance? What do we do for the future? Because you can't rebuild your house every year. Elsewhere,
more problems. This has become the sound heard throughout the town of Langport. The hum of generators being used to pump water kept running for days on end. The problems here being caused by the river and the heavy rain. Yesterday's floodwater has subsided, but it's completely ruined the bespoke double-layered floor that had recently been put into this dance studio. For the owner, it couldn't have come at a worse time.
It's a tragedy. You know, my heart is broken, and that sounds silly, but I've put my heart into this business. I've worked in dance for 20 years, and now we were just getting to a really exciting place where we were getting as many people as we could from Somerset to come and use the building to do great dance stuff.
Those affected here are now doing what they can to repair the damage, but keeping a close eye on the river. The water levels have fallen here in the past few hours, but with more rain forecast to fall this evening and again at the weekend, everyone here is well aware that there could be yet more flooding. John Beaver, ITV News.
Well, certainly not good news for those living on the Somerset levels, where this week it seems there isn't much chance of being able to lead anything like a normal life.
Yes, many parents are struggling to get their children to school. We followed one mother, Bryony Sadler, who has a massive detour just to get her son to the school gates, as Kevin Langdon reports.
The school run should take Bryony Sadler 10 to 15 minutes, but the A361 is closed and impassable at Borough Bridge. So she now has to drive out to the motorway at Bridgewater, down to Taunton and through the rush hour traffic. The journey can take 45 minutes each way, causing major inconvenience.
Massive, isn't it? Well, the ones that want to be towards Borough Bridge, you know, the alternative route is huge. You can't get there, you've got to go all the way round, and in some cases that's, 20 miles in either way.
After finally dropping off her son Toby at school, there are more problems to deal with back home. The floodwater has already swallowed 6 of the 7 acres of land her family owns.
The business is suffering. We run a pure breed chicken, just a very small scale, breeding a few chickens. They've had to go to other places at the moment because their houses and runs are underwater, so they can't stay in the water because obviously that would be loss of life. They can't withstand standing in the water. I'm a mobile hairdresser and my clients are at the other end of the water and I can't get to them. So from every point of view, we're being attacked by this water. Some people have gone, some people have already been flooded. There's already a business going underwater at the moment and they've had to move out. They moved out Saturday. So, people's lives are upside down. The water is wrecking everything. You can see it, but you can't do anything about it. So you get scared and you're worried all the time and people don't sleep and just your stress trying to deal with day-to-day life is enough without having to worry about whether your house is safe and everything that you strive to work for just gets washed down a big plug hole.
As the water moves closer and closer to her home, Bryony believes the Environment Agency must take action.
The only thing that can happen, that can help us, they have to dredge the rivers. They have to dredge and more dredge, because that's the only thing that's going to stop this happening.
Last year, flooding closed the A361 for several weeks. If this happens again, the outlook for those living on the levels and surrounded by water is pretty bleak. Kevin Langdon, ITV News, Somerset.
One worry for people affected by flooding is whether they'll still be able to get insurance. Under an agreement with the government, the insurance industry is creating a special fund to provide affordable cover for people whose homes are at risk, though this still has to be approved by Parliament and won't be in place until next year. Well, joining me from our studios in Millbank is Malcolm Tarling from the Association of British Insurers. So it seems the government is stepping in. Do we know how this is going to work?
Well, the insurance companies are very concerned and want to make sure that flood insurance remains widely available to customers throughout the region. And we have developed a scheme which the government have approved, which aims to cap flood insurance premiums for people throughout the region and indeed the rest of the UK, to ensure that those people most at need of flood insurance, least able to afford premiums, are able to afford the cover, because the premiums will be capped at a certain level.
That is the key, isn't it? Making it affordable, and people who are flooded, it's often extremely expensive for them to get insurance. Is this really going to help them?
Well, the insurance industry wants to do all it can to ensure that flood insurance remains widely available. The UK is one of the very few countries in the world where flood insurance is automatically provided as standard as part of home insurance, and we want to ensure it continues that way. But the only way we can do that is if we address the rising flood risk in the UK. Flooding, I'm afraid, is going to get worse, and the cost of insurance will rise unless we take action to in some way better manage the risk, which is why we've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort in developing this new scheme, which now needs to be worked on to ensure that it can be up and running in September next year.
What's your advice to people who are suffering with flooding right now?
Well, nobody needs me to tell them that flooding is a very traumatic and distressing experience. So if you've been flooded, I suppose the common sense advice is to contact your insurer straight away, because they will have 24-hour emergency helplines staffed by people who can tell you what to do. I know there's an army of loss adjusters and claims inspectors visiting properties throughout the Bristol and Somerset region that have been flooded to help them recover. Obviously, we're dependent on water levels receding so that we can get to properties and inspect them. Once we can do that, we can start the drying out process so that people can get back on their feet as quickly as possible from what is, after all, a very distressing and a very traumatic experience.
OK, Malcolm Tarling, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, still with the floods, the government is being urged to apply to a European fund set up to help countries affected by disasters like this. The Liberal Democrat MEP for the South West, Sir Graham Watson, has written to the Environment Secretary about the £400 million fund, some of which was used after the floods in Gloucestershire back in 2007.
There is certainly things that Europe can do to help, and I have written, along with others, to Owen Paterson, asking him to apply for funding under the European Union Solidarity Fund. This is a fund that exists for major disasters like this. It helped communities on the Danube and the Elbe rivers in the flooding they've had in recent years. There's some 400 million available in the fund for 2014, and I think we should be seeking support from that fund.
You can find full coverage of the region's flooding on our website. The address is on your screen now. It's itv.com/West Country.
To other news now, and Avon and Somerset police are looking for a man